Welcome to this explainer. I want you to just take a deep breath and listen closely. Today, we're not just crunching data or looking at policy. We're actually preparing to dissect a corpse, a massive, sprawling, concrete corpse, hidden away in the mountains. We're looking at Lavasa, India's very first private hill city. What was supposed to be this ultimate utopian dream has decayed into an eerie, suspenseful nightmare. So settle in, lower the lights a bit, and let's carefully peel back the layers of this modern ruin together.
Now, to really grasp this chilling reality, just listen to David Cooper. He's a farmer Mumbaikar who moved out there looking for a peaceful retirement. But instead, he and a handful of others are now totally isolated. They're effectively trapped in this crumbling shell, guarding whatever's left of their life investments. It's a haunting existence, honestly, living in a place that practically died before it was even fully born.
And the sensory details coming from recent visitors? They're straight out of a horror movie. To even enter this decaying monument, you have to pay a 500 rupee toll at a boom barrier. And beyond that, just an empty city. You've got multi-crore luxury bungalows standing completely abandoned. Those once bright red and yellow Mediterranean facades are now just choked with creeping green moss. Explorers walking through vacant hotel rooms have literally stumbled upon animal bones and skulls. Security booths are deserted, leaving the few remaining residents totally alone in these lawless, darkened corridors.
Part 1. A billionaire's utopian dream.
So how exactly did a project with this much promise turn into a ghost town? Let's flash back to the year 2000. The tone back then wasn't dark at all. It was driven by the grandiose, almost hubristic vision of billionaire Ajit Gulabchand. He wanted to build an entire city from scratch, completely free from standard government bureaucracy. But the whole dream was built on this incredibly jarring juxtaposition. The inspiration was Portofino, Italy, that charming centuries-old Mediterranean fishing village. But the reality of the location? That was the Western Ghats of India. We're talking about a fragile tropical forest, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and home to hundreds of vulnerable or endangered species. The idea was to forcefully parachute an Italian coastal aesthetic directly into one of India's most ecologically sensitive landscapes.
Just let this number sink in for a second. 25,000. That's 25,000 acres. That was the staggering scale we're talking about here. Lavasa wasn't meant to just be a neighborhood. It was planned to be 5 distinct towns, eventually housing 300,000 people. It was a massive billion-dollar canvas.
And to lure in investors and homebuyers, the developers threw out all these shiny utopian buzzwords: an 18-hole golf course designed by Nick Faldo, a football academy tied directly to Manchester City, a US-backed space theme park. They promised a zero-crime environment, perfectly manicured streets, and absolute efficiency, mainly because the entire municipality would be privately managed. I mean, on paper, it sounded like an absolute paradise, right? Thousands of people literally poured their life savings into this mirage.
Part 2. Nature and land grabbed.
But if you look beneath the cobblestone streets and those colorful facades, the foundations were pretty sinister. The math alone is horrifying. To build the city, land had to be acquired from 18 villages, largely belonging to Adivasi and farming communities. Reports show some of this land was purchased for as little as 300 rupees per acre. Yet, later on, government investigations revealed that the monthly lease value of that exact same land was 23,000 rupees. It was a shocking disparity, one that left vulnerable tribal communities displaced, jobless, and completely stripped of their agricultural lifelines.
And then, of course, came the environmental cost. Carving a massive concrete city into the Western Ghats meant millions of trees were cut down. Natural water streams that were absolutely vital to the region were diverted. Hillsides were aggressively blasted. The very ecology that made the location beautiful in the first place was being systematically dismantled just to make way for all that concrete.
Part 3. Politics and the crackdown.
Now, a project of this magnitude, bending so many environmental and land acquisition rules, it obviously doesn't happen in a vacuum. It requires a highly connected web to fast-track all those approvals. Policy and power were deeply intertwined here. The Maharashtra government actually tweaked existing hill station policies specifically to allow Lavasa to build on reservoir fronts and valleys. And according to court and media reports, the influential Power family had deep ties to the project. Shard Pawar's relatives, including his daughter Supriya Sule, held a nearly 22% early stake in the developer. Plus, Ajit Pawar led a meeting that granted ex post facto, meaning after the fact, clearances for a dam. The High Court later stated he was remiss in his duty for that act. Impartially speaking, this was the infrastructure of power that allowed the city to rise so quickly.
But watch how fast the death blow actually lands. In 2000, the vision is born. By 2004, construction begins on the first town, Dasve. But then, November 2010 hits, and the hammer falls. The Ministry of Environment issues a sudden, devastating stop work order due to severe ecological dilations. The earth movers went entirely silent, and even though a conditional clearance was granted a year later in 2011, the illusion of invincibility was already shattered. The cash flow choked, and the investors fled.
Part 4. A city goes bankrupt.
That environmental halt? It was a fatal wound. Without a steady stream of new investment and property sales to feed the massive construction costs, the utopian dream rapidly transformed into a financial black hole. $610 million. That was the staggering debt burden that eventually broke the back of Lavasa Corporation, forcing the company into insolvency by 2018. An entire city, just totally bankrupt.
This triggered a legal nightmare that India had literally never seen before. Lavasa was pushed into the IBC, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. This is India's legal framework designed to reorganize and resolve corporate distress. It treats a failing entity as a discrete economic unit, whose assets can be frozen or liquidated. But here's the catch. Lavasa wasn't just a company. It was a living, breathing ecosystem with thousands of residents.
To put this into perspective, think about when Detroit went bankrupt in the U.S. The law recognized it as a city failure. Core civic identity, municipal structures, and basic services were preserved while the debt was restructured. But under Indian law, Lavasa is treated merely as a corporate asset. The urban functions are reduced to balance sheets. The resolution professionals had to act as city custodians, completely ignoring the daily survival needs of the people actually living there.
Part 5. Trapped in the ruins.
Which brings us right back to the human element of this story. The people who bought into this dream are now trapped in a legal purgatory, basically watching the jungle slowly reclaim their neighborhood. Under the bankruptcy code, these homebuyers aren't citizens. They're legally classified merely as financial creditors. Because of that, they've been forced to accept massive 60% financial haircuts on their investments. They're left without any of the promised civic amenities or maintenance, stripped of municipal voting rights. They aren't just negotiating for debt recovery anymore. They are literally pleading for basic daily survival in an incomplete concrete shell.
Now recently, a supposed savior did emerge. Darwin Platform Infrastructure bid 1,814 crore rupees to acquire Lavasa through the courts. But it looks like a hollow promise. Darwin recently failed to pay the 92.5 crore rupees needed just for the working capital to keep the basic city functions running. So the whole resolution is still mired in profound uncertainty.
And honestly, a few crore won't even scratch the surface. The original founder, Ajit Gulabchand, estimates it would take a staggering $1.5 billion just to restart and revive the decaying project. So, the mountain of concrete just sits there, half-finished, slowly rotting in the monsoon rains.
Which leaves us staring into the shadows of this ghost town, looking at the moss-covered walls and the completely empty streets, and asking one very dark, unavoidable question. When a private corporation owns a city, who rescues the citizens when the company dies? Thanks for joining this explainer.